My name is Lena Hart, and I still remember the sound of the microphone that night, too sharp, too clear, carrying my father's laugh through the entire ballroom. It was supposed to be my wedding day. The chandeliers above the tables glittered like melted gold, the kind of light people call romantic on Pinterest. Everyone was smiling, glasses clinking, forks touching porcelain. Then came the moment for family gifts, the little tradition my mother insisted on to honor both children equally. My brother Dylan went first. My parents handed him a thick envelope. I saw the edge of a check inside, and someone near me gasped softly when they said the number $700,000. My father clapped him on the back, his voice booming through the speakers, for the one who always made us proud. Then it was my turn. My mother passed me a small white card. I opened it. A single bill, one crisp, clean $100 note slipped onto the tablecloth. The laughter was quiet at first, polite, confused. And then my father said loud enough for the microphone to catch it. At least she can finally say she earned something today. The room spun. I felt the eyes. The pity, the second-hand shame crawling up my skin. Evan, my husband, reached for my hand under the table. His thumb traced slow circles on my wrist. He didn't say a word. No one in that room knew what was coming. Not my parents, not my brother, not the 100 guests who thought this was just another family humiliation gone too far. They didn't know that the man sitting beside me, the quiet one, held the power to end the dynasty my parents had built on cruelty, and I wasn't going to stop him. The laughter faded, but the sting stayed. The DJ, poor man, tried to fill the silence with music, a light jazz track that only made the air heavier. I could feel the pulse in my throat, like every heartbeat was counting down to something I couldn't yet name. My mother leaned toward me, pretending to fix the strap of my dress. "Smile, Lena," she whispered, her perfume sickly sweet. "Don't make this about you." I wanted to laugh at the irony. My humiliation had already become entertainment. Dylan was still basking in his spotlight, holding his champagne like a trophy, while my father chatted with a distant uncle about raising strong sons. I didn't move. I just sat there, fingers curled against the linen, the $100 bill lying untouched on my coat like a tiny flag of surrender. Evan's hand brushed mine again, one subtle reminder that we weren't done here. I thought about all the years that led to this moment. The dinners where my accomplishments were met with silence, the way my father always introduced me as Dylan's sister, never by my name. Each memory was another drop of gasoline, and tonight he'd struck the match. But anger is easy. What I felt was colder, sharper, a quiet, deliberate kind of rage that doesn't shout at plans. I took a slow sip of water, smiled for the photographer who didn't know any better, and finally said to Evan under my breath, "Let them finish the show." He nodded once. That's what I loved about him. He never asked for explanations, only timing. As the speeches continued, I folded the $100 bill neatly and tucked it into my clutch. My father's laughter echoed again across the hall, full of pride for a son who didn't deserve it. I looked at him one last time, not with hate, but with certainty. He had no idea he'd just handed me the final reason to destroy the illusion he called family. 2 weeks before the wedding, an email landed in my inbox by mistake. It was from my mother, sent to the family's attorney, but she'd copied me instead of Dylan. The subject line read "House Transfer" before the ceremony. I opened it. The words were clinical, stripped of warmth. "Once Lena marries, we'll execute the quitclaim deed to Dylan. No reason she should inherit property we've invested in." I stared at the screen for a long time until the cursor blinked like it was laughing. Later that night, I showed it to Evan. He read it once, then again slower this time. He didn't say "I told you so." He didn't need to. "They're cutting you out," he said simply. "Not just me," I replied. "They're cutting off the last piece of control they think they have." He looked at me the way he always did when I was balancing between anger and strategy, like someone waiting for the storm to hit. "They won't stop at that," he said. "Your father's name came up in our due diligence. He refinanced the family home through a commercial lender 6 months ago. That mortgage portfolio belongs to Rhodes Meridian now." It took a moment for that to sink in. My family's home, the symbol of their pride, their power, was already under my husband's company's control. Fate, irony, or both. That night, Evan and I sat on the balcony, the city lights flickering below us. I remember the cold glass of wine in my hand and the way the air smelled before rain. I don't want revenge, I said quietly. Not the kind that screams. He reached over, took the glass from me. Then don't scream. Let them expose themselves. That became our silent promise. No threats, no theatrics, just truth delivered with precision. I didn't realize it then, but that email had started the countdown. And by the time the wedding came, I wasn't the daughter they thought they could humiliate anymore. I was the woman ready to let them fall. When the band paused for the final round of toasts, I knew it was time. My father was halfway through another story about Dylan's business instincts, his voice slurring just enough to sound triumphant. My mother's smile had that brittle shine, the kind that cracks if you look too closely. Evan rose from his chair. The movement was slow, deliberate. He adjusted his cufflinks silver, understated, and the room quieted without him saying a word. He had that kind of presence, the quiet that made people listen. "If I could have a minute," he said. "As Lena's husband, I'd like to thank the Hart family for their generous contributions." Polite laughter rippled around the tables, still unaware of the storm beneath his tone. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder, the Rhodes Meridian seal embossed in silver. "What most of you don't know," he continued, "is that my firm recently acquired a number of commercial mortgage portfolios here in Illinois. One of them happens to involve the Hart residence." The room froze. Even the clinking glasses stopped. My father blinked, confused, then laughed like it was a joke. "That's ridiculous. We're not—" Evan placed a single document on the table. "Notice of default," he said evenly. "Issued 2 months ago. Your lender of record is now Rhodes Meridian. I'm here as both family and creditor." My mother's face drained of color. Dylan muttered something I couldn't hear. My father's jaw tightened. "You can't—" "I can," Evan said, "and I have." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. I sat perfectly still, my hand resting lightly on the clutch that held my $100 bill. For years my family had measured worth by money and humiliation. Tonight their own language turned against them. My father's voice broke the quiet low and brittle. "You planned this." Evan met his gaze calmly. "No, you did." And just like that, the empire of arrogance my parents had built began to crack. Not with an explosion, but with the simple, devastating sound of truth landing where it hurt most. The next morning, the fallout began. The Hart family's attorney, Paula Kent, arrived at the hotel before sunrise. Her face tight, her hands full of folders she couldn't quite organize fast enough. She wanted a meeting. Evan agreed on one condition, that I sit in. We met in the private lounge, sunlight cutting through the blinds in long golden stripes. My father paced the room, his voice rising with every sentence. "You ambushed us, both of you. This is blackmail." Evan leaned back in his chair. "No, Charles. This is disclosure. Everything I presented is public record. You were in default before you walked me down the aisle." Paula tried to mediate, her voice caught between legal precision and disbelief. "There's still a 90-day cure period. If the payment is made, which it won't be." Evan interrupted, polite but absolute. "The loan was restructured. The due date passed last week." My mother looked at me, then eyes wide, tears forming not of sorrow but of panic. "Lena, please," she said. "You can't let him do this. We're family." I almost laughed. Family? The word had always sounded like a threat in her mouth. I stood slow and calm. "You handed me $100 last night," I said softly. "Keep it. You'll need it more than I do." The silence that followed was absolute. Paula cleared her throat, muttered something about possible negotiations, but Evan was already closing the folder. "We'll proceed according to contract," he said. When we left the room, my father called after me my name, not sweetheart or Lena girl like he used to. Just my name, stripped bare. I didn't turn around. Outside, the air was crisp clean in that way only November mornings can be. Evan reached for my hand as we walked toward the car. For the first time in my life, I felt something that had nothing to do with revenge or righteousness. It was peace cold heavy and entirely mine. Within days, the news spread through Northbrook like wildfire. Someone leaked the story, a wedding scandal meets financial collapse. The local papers couldn't resist. They called it poetic justice. I didn't bother to read the comments. My phone lit up for 3 days straight. Missed calls, voicemails, texts that began with please and ended with "you don't understand." I understood perfectly. My parents were desperate. The house was listed for sale under court supervision, and Dylan's company, his precious startup, was suddenly under investigation for misreporting investor funds. The same investors my father had introduced him to. Karma doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it just shows up, paperwork in hand. Evan handled the legal details. I didn't have to lift a finger. Every now and then he'd give me updates: foreclosure, filed assets, frozen. Dylan subpoenaed. Each line sounded like punctuation in a story that was finally ending. One night, my mother called from an unknown number. I answered without thinking. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize her voice. It trembled, raw human. "Lena, we're losing everything. He's not sleeping. Please just talk to your father." I stared out the window at the streetlights stretching endlessly across the dark. "You didn't listen when I was begging," I said quietly. "Why start now?" She cried, asked if I could forgive. I didn't raise my voice. "Forgiveness isn't the same as contact, Mom. I hope you learn the difference." Then I hung up. After that, I changed my number, deleted every old photo, every message. Evan didn't ask why. He just sat beside me in silence, his hand resting over mine. Sometimes peace isn't gentle. It's an absence the echo after chaos stops. For the first time, I could breathe without waiting for the next blow. And in that silence, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was done. Winter settled over Chicago like a quiet apology. The streets outside our apartment turned silver with frost, and the city lights looked softer, as if even they understood when to lower their voices. Life moved forward in small, steady ways. Evan and I spent mornings over black coffee in silence, not the heavy kind, but the kind that feels earned. The company thrived, investors came and went, but I didn't chase updates anymore. I had nothing left to prove. Sometimes I caught myself scrolling through old photos my family lined up in picture-perfect symmetry, smiling with teeth and no warmth. It felt like watching ghosts perform a play I no longer starred in. I didn't hate them. Hate requires energy, and I'd already given them too much of mine. Dr. Lang, my therapist, once asked if I missed them. I told her I missed the idea of them, the parents I imagined before I understood who they were. The ones I used to believe would be proud of me if I just achieved a little more. But illusions can't love you back. On the anniversary of the wedding, Evan suggested dinner somewhere quiet. We chose a small Italian place on Clark Street, warm, lighting a pianist, nothing extravagant. Halfway through dessert, he reached across the table and said, "You know, you never really talk about that night." I smiled. "That's because it stopped being about them." He nodded, eyes soft. "So what was it about then?" I looked at him for the moment, feeling the hum of the city beyond the glass, the faint vibration of a world still spinning. "Freedom," I said. Not from them, from the version of me that kept asking for permission to exist. Outside, snow began to fall quiet and relentless, blanketing everything it touched. As we stepped into the cold, I slipped my hand into his, the night stretching ahead like a clean page. I didn't marry for love or for revenge or for redemption. I married my freedom. Looking back now, I realize revenge was never really the point. It was the mirror I had to hold up to see how far I'd come. My parents built a world where love was conditional, where value was measured in numbers, and pride came wrapped in shame. I spent years trying to earn a place in that world, until I understood I didn't have to live in it at all. Evan once said that silence can be louder than fury. He was right. Justice doesn't always need an audience. Sometimes it just needs a boundary. People still ask if I regret what happened, if it was worth it. I tell them yes, but not for the reasons they think. It wasn't about watching them fall. It was about finally standing without fear. There's a kind of peace that doesn't feel like victory, just clarity. The kind that lets you look in the mirror and see yourself not through the reflection of who failed to love you, but through the light of who you chose to become. So when I think of that night, the laughter, the bill, the silence that followed, I don't flinch anymore. I smile, because it wasn't the end of a family. It was the beginning of me.